Captain Jake Morrison gripped the command chair as Earth's dawn shuddered violently through hyperspace. The ship's experimental faster-than-light drive screamed like a wounded animal, throwing sparks across the bridge. Red warning lights bathed everything in an angry glow, while alarms blared from every console. "Something's wrong with the jump calculations," shouted Dr. Alex Rodriguez from his science station. His fingers flew over the controls, trying to make sense of the chaotic readings flooding his screens. "We're not going where we planned." Ambassador Lisa Taylor steadied herself against a bulkhead, her diplomatic uniform wrinkled from the rough journey. "How far off course are we, Captain?" "I don't know yet," Jake replied through gritted teeth. The ship bucked again, nearly throwing him from his seat. "Ben, what's the engine status?" Chief Engineer Ben Carter's voice crackled through the comm system from the engine room. "The drive core is overheating, sir. I'm trying to stabilize it, but we need to drop out of hyperspace now." "Do it," Jake ordered. The transition back to normal space felt like falling off a cliff. One moment they were surrounded by the swirling colors of hyperspace, and the next they were floating in the middle of what looked like a massive crystal cathedral. The Earth's dawn had materialized inside an enormous chamber filled with beings, unlike anything humans had ever seen. Thousands of alien creatures turned to stare at the human ship. Some floated in bubbles of liquid, others stood on platforms of pure energy. Crystalline beings that looked like living diamonds shared space with creatures made of flowing gas and light. The chamber itself defied human understanding, with walls that seemed to bend space and floors that existed on multiple levels at once. "Oh no," Lisa whispered, her face going pale. "Jake, I think we're in the Galactic Council chambers." "The what now?" Jake asked, but his question was answered by a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It spoke in a harmonic frequency that made their bones vibrate. "Unknown vessel, you have violated the sacred space of the Grand Assembly. Identify yourselves immediately or face destruction." Alex's instruments went crazy as energy readings spiked all around them. "Captain, we're surrounded by weapons that could vaporize us in seconds." Through the view screen, they watched as alien security forces moved into position. Ships that looked more like living creatures than machines took aim at Earth's dawn. Some vessels appeared to be made of pure light, while others seemed to exist partially outside normal space. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Earth's Dawn," Jake broadcast on all frequencies. "We're from the planet Earth, and our arrival here was an accident. Our navigation system malfunctioned during our first hyperspace jump." A being that looked like a walking crystal formation approached their ship. Its thought somehow reached them directly, bypassing their communication systems entirely. "I am Council Speaker Vorthaxi. No species enters this chamber uninvited. Your presence here is either an act of war or supreme arrogance." Lisa stepped forward, drawing on her diplomatic training. "Honored Speaker, we mean no disrespect. We are explorers, not warriors. This truly was an accident." "Accidents do not occur in the sacred chamber," Vorthaxi replied coldly. "This space is protected by quantum barriers that prevent unauthorized entry. Your ship should not be able to exist. Here." Alex studied his readings frantically. The alien technology around them was beyond anything Earth scientists had imagined. But something else caught his attention. Many of the assembled aliens kept glancing toward dark corners of the chamber, where shadows moved independently of any light source. "Captain," Alex whispered, "these beings are afraid of something. Look at their body language." Jake observed the alien delegates more carefully. Despite their advanced technology and obvious power, many seemed nervous. They clustered, together in groups, avoiding certain areas of the chamber entirely. "What are they scared of?" Ryan Bell asked. The ship's security chief had remained quiet until now, but his trained eye had noticed the same thing. Before anyone could answer, more ships appeared around them. These vessels were different from the Council security forces. They seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating holes in space itself. The temperature on the bridge dropped several degrees just from their presence. "The apex silence approaches," one of the alien delegates whispered, the words somehow reaching the human crew despite being spoken in an unknown language. "What's the apex silence?" Lisa asked, but Vorthaxi had already begun backing away from their ship. "You have brought attention we cannot afford," the speaker said, its crystal form flickering with what might have been fear. Your chaotic arrival has disturbed the balance. Jake made a decision that would change everything. We're not going anywhere until someone explains what's happening here. You do not understand the danger you have created, Vorthaxi replied. The silence feeds on disruption, and your arrival has provided a feast. More dark ships materialized around the chamber. The alien delegates began evacuating in panic, their advanced vessels fleeing through dimensional rifts and hyperspace portals. Within minutes, only the human ship remained, surrounded by the shadow vessels. Captain, I'm picking up massive energy readings from those dark ships, Alex reported. Whatever they are, they're scanning us. Let them look, Jake said defiantly. Maybe they'll learn something. One of the shadow ships moved closer. As it approached, the crew could see that it wasn't entirely solid. Parts of it phased in and out of normal space, existing in dimensions humans couldn't perceive. A communication channel opened, but no words came through. Instead, the humans felt a presence probing their minds. The sensation was cold and hungry, like being examined by a predator deciding whether you were worth eating. Images flashed through their consciousness. Planets stripped bare, civilizations reduced to empty husks, entire species consumed and forgotten. Get out of my head, Jake snarled, fighting against the mental intrusion. The presence withdrew slightly, and when it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons. Curious. You resist where others submit. Your species was not scheduled for contact. Yet. Scheduled by who? Lisa demanded. By those who tend the harvest, the voice replied. Your world shows promise, but you have ripened ahead of schedule. This complicates our plans. Ben's voice crackled over the comm. Captain, I've got the engines back online. We can jump if we need to. Jake looked at his crew. They were outnumbered and outgunned, facing forces they didn't understand. But retreat felt like abandoning Earth to whatever these creatures had planned. We're leaving, Jake announced. But this isn't over. No, the hungry voice agreed, as the shadow ships began to withdraw. It is just beginning. Your species will be watched now. When you are ready, we will come for you. Earth's dawn jumped to hyperspace, leaving the chamber and its mysteries behind. But Jake knew they carried something more dangerous than any weapon. Knowledge that humanity was being hunted by something ancient and patient, that viewed entire civilizations as nothing more than crops to be harvested when they reached maturity. Earth's dawn drifted silently in the asteroid field, her hull scarred from emergency repairs. Jake watched through the view screen as Ben Carter worked outside the ship, welding damaged sections back together. The engineer's suit lights cast strange shadows among the floating rocks that reminded everyone too much of the shadow ships they'd escaped. How long before we can make another jump? Jake asked over the comm. Another 6 hours minimum, Ben replied, sparks flying from his welding torch. The hyperspace drive took a real beating. We're lucky it didn't explode. Inside the ship, Lisa hunched over a data terminal, her eyes red from staring at alien symbols for the past 12 hours. The intercepted transmissions from the council chamber were encoded in languages no human had ever seen, but their translation computers were slowly making progress. I think I found something, Lisa said, her voice tight with exhaustion and growing horror. These aren't just government communications, they're farming reports. Alex looked up from his own console where he'd been analyzing the energy signatures of the shadow ships. What kind of farming? The kind where entire worlds are the crops, Lisa replied grimly. She brought up a holographic display showing a galactic map marked with colored dots. Each color represents a different development stage. Green dots are primitive worlds, yellow are developing civilizations, and red dots are ready for harvest. Jake studied the map with a sinking feeling. Where's Earth? Lisa highlighted their home system. The dot pulsed yellow, but even as they watched, it flickered toward red. We're supposed to be harvested in the next few cycles. Our unscheduled hyperspace jump moved us ahead of their timeline. Harvested by what? Ryan asked, though his security training had already given him dark suspicions. Alex pulled up his analysis of the shadow ships. Based on the energy readings, I recorded those ships exist partially outside our dimension. They're not just advanced technology, they're something else entirely. Something that feeds on entire civilizations, Lisa added, translating more of the intercepted data. The Galactic Council isn't a government. They're shepherds, guiding species development to create better harvests for their masters. Ben's voice crackled over the comm from outside. You folks might want to see this. I found something attached to our hull. Through the external cameras, they watched Ben carefully remove a small crystalline device from the ship's outer plating. It pulsed with the same energy signature as the council chamber. It's a tracker, Alex realized. They've been monitoring us. Not just us, Lisa said, her fingers flying over her console as she dug deeper into the council files. They've been manipulating human development for centuries. Radio technology, nuclear power, spaceflight, all of it was guided to push us along specific development paths. Jake felt his blood run cold. You're saying our entire technological advancement was planned? Look at this. Lisa brought up historical data comparing human progress to other harvested species. The patterns are identical. Every species follows the same development curve, hitting the same technological milestones in the same order. We're not exploring space, we're following a recipe. Ryan pulled up Earth's communication networks on his security console. If they've been watching us this long, they know everything about our defenses, our military capabilities, our population centers, our leaders. It gets worse, Alex said quietly. He'd found references to previous harvests in the data. I'm seeing records going back millions of years. Hundreds of thousands of species all developed to maturity and then consumed. The Devourers, that's what the Council calls their masters, have been doing this across the entire galaxy. What happens to the species that get harvested? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Lisa brought up images that made everyone's stomach turn. Planets stripped of all life, their surfaces cracked and barren. Entire star systems left as empty husks, drifting through space like cosmic graveyards. They take everything, she whispered. Not just the people, but all the knowledge, all the culture, all the life force itself. Then they move on to the next harvest. Have any species ever fought back? Ryan asked. Alex found the resistance records buried deep in the files. A few tried. There's mentions of something called the Remnant Coalition. Survivors from harvested worlds who escaped and tried to organize resistance. But the files suggest they were all eventually hunted down. Maybe not all of them, Ben said as he climbed back into the ship's airlock. He'd been listening to their conversation through the comm. If some escaped, they might still be out there. Even if they are, what could they do against something that's been harvesting civilizations for millions of years? Lisa asked. Jake studied the galactic map, noting the distribution of harvested worlds. The Devourers are powerful, but they depend on the Council to identify and prepare harvest worlds. Destroy that infrastructure, and they lose their ability to find new prey. The Council has thousands of member species and technology we can't even understand, Alex pointed out. But they're not warriors, Ryan observed. Did you see how quickly they ran when the shadow ships appeared? They're bureaucrats, not soldiers. They maintain the system, they don't defend it. Because they've never had to, Jake realized. For millions of years, no one has challenged them. They probably don't even have real military forces, just security to keep order among the member species. Lisa pulled up more data about the Council's structure. The entire system is based on species voluntarily following the development guidelines. They use economic incentives, technology sharing, and diplomatic pressure to keep everyone in line. But it's all carrot, no stick. What about the shadow ships? Ben asked. They only show up for harvests or major disruptions, Alex replied. The rest of the time, the Devourers stay hidden in whatever dimension they call home. They're predators, not occupiers. Jake began to see possibilities in their impossible situation. So we have a bureaucracy that's never faced real resistance, predators that only emerge to feed, and potentially some survivors from previous harvests still hiding somewhere in the galaxy. You're thinking of fighting back? Lisa said. It wasn't a question. I'm thinking about Earth, Jake replied. About the billions of people who have no idea they're being fattened for slaughter. About every other species on that map that's going to face the same fate. The odds are impossible, Ryan pointed out. though his tone suggested he was already calculating strategies. "Impossible odds are what humans do best," Ben said with a grin as he sealed the airlock behind him. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen? We're already scheduled to be eaten." Alex found references to old resistance supply caches hidden throughout the galaxy. If the Remnant Coalition really existed, they might have left resources behind. Weapons, technology, intelligence networks. Or traps, Lisa warned. These could be Council honeypots designed to catch anyone who tries to resist. Only one way. "To find out," Jake said. He turned to Ben. "How soon can we jump?" "Give me 4 more hours and we'll be ready for anything." Jake looked at his crew. They were tired, frightened, and facing an enemy that had never been defeated. But they were also human. And humans had a long history of doing stupid, impossible things when their backs were against the wall. "Start plotting courses to those cache locations," he ordered. "If we're going to save Earth, we need to find out what the previous resistance learned before they died." "And if the caches are traps?" Lisa asked. "Then we spring them and see what happens," Jake replied. "Because doing nothing guarantees Earth gets harvested. At least this way we go down fighting." Outside the ship, the asteroids drifted peacefully through space, unaware that the small human vessel hiding among them had just declared war on the oldest predators in the galaxy. The abandoned space station hung in the void like a metallic tumor, its surface pocked with meteor impacts and radiation scarring. Earth's dawn approached carefully, sensors sweeping for any sign of life or hidden weapons. The first Remnant Coalition cache had been empty except for corrupted data files, but this second location showed faint power readings. "Looks like someone's home," Alex reported from his science station. "I'm detecting minimal life support and what might be a small fusion reactor." "Could be automated systems," Jake replied, but he kept his hand near the weapons controls anyway. "Ben, are you picking up any communication signals?" "Nothing on standard frequencies," the engineer replied. "But there's some kind of quantum transmission coming from the station. It's encoded, but not in any council cipher we've seen." Lisa studied the alien structure through the view screen. The architecture doesn't match any known species in the council database. Whoever built this wanted to stay hidden. As they drew closer, a section of the station's hull suddenly irised open like an eye. A voice spoke over their communication system, the words translated but carrying an unmistakably reptilian hiss. "Human vessel, you approach sacred ground. State your purpose or be destroyed." "This is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth's Dawn," Jake broadcast back. "We're seeking information about the Devourers and the Harvest System." A long silence followed. Then the voice spoke again, heavy with what sounded like surprise and ancient pain. "Humans, you are not scheduled for contact yet. How do you know of the harvest?" "We crashed their party," Jake replied grimly. "Literally. Our first hyperspace jump put us right in the middle of a galactic council meeting." "Impossible. The sacred chamber is protected by quantum barriers that prevent unauthorized entry. Apparently our navigation computer had other ideas," Lisa interjected. "We've been running from shadow ships ever since." Another pause, then a different voice joined the conversation. This one sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane, musical but alien. "If the silence has marked your species, you have little time. Dock at Bay 7. We will speak, though speaking may doom us all." The station's docking bay was larger than expected, designed to accommodate ships of wildly different configurations. As Earth's dawn settled onto the landing platform, Jake could see other vessels in the shadows. Some looked like they'd been cobbled together from salvage parts, while others displayed technology that seemed to bend light around their hulls. "Full environmental suits," Jake ordered. "We don't know what we're walking into." The airlock cycled, and they stepped into a corridor that defied human understanding of architecture. The walls curved in directions that hurt to look at, and gravity seemed to work differently in various sections. Their guide waited in the main chamber, and Jake's first sight of him was a shock. Kethmar stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scaled hide bearing scars from countless battles. His species, the Veltar, were supposedly extinct according to council records. His vertical pupils fixed on the humans with predatory intensity. "You should not exist," he said without preamble. The Veltar homeworld was harvested 3,000 cycles ago. But you're here, Alex observed. Some few escaped. We have spent centuries in hiding, planning our revenge. Kethmar gestured to other figures emerging from the shadows. We are the remnant coalition, survivors of the harvest. The assembled beings represented a dozen species that official records claimed were extinct. A creature made of crystalline formations introduced herself as Silandra, of the Resonance Collective. Flowing beings of pure energy called themselves the Ethernal. Each species had their own story of survival, of watching their homeworlds die while they fled into the darkness between stars. How many of you are there? Lisa asked. Across the galaxy, perhaps a few million individuals from hundreds of harvested species. Silandra replied, her crystalline body chiming softly with each word. Not enough to challenge the devourers directly, but sufficient to cause them inconvenience. We've been studying them for millennia, added an Ethernal whose form flickered between dimensions. The harvest system has weaknesses, but exploiting them requires precise timing and coordination. Kethmar led them deeper into the station, past chambers filled with salvaged technology and memorial walls bearing the names of extinct civilizations. The Devourers are not invincible. They exist partially outside normal space-time, which makes them powerful but also limits their ability to act directly in our reality. They depend on the Council to identify and prepare harvest worlds, Ryan observed. Correct. Destroy the Council's coordination network, and the Devourers become blind to potential prey. But the network is vast and well protected. Ben studied the alien technology around them with an engineer's eye. What about their ships, those shadow vessels we encountered? Harvester ships, Silandra explained. They phase between dimensions, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. But they must exist fully in our reality to feed, creating brief windows of vulnerability. The Coalition had spent centuries gathering intelligence, but their efforts had been hampered by their small numbers and the need for absolute secrecy. Every action risked exposure and the attention of the Devourers. Your chaotic arrival has changed everything, Kethmar said. The harvest schedule is being accelerated across multiple sectors. Worlds that should have had centuries more development time are being marked for immediate consumption. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Because of us? Because the Devourers fear disruption of their carefully managed system. The Ethernal corrected. Your species exhibits traits they find particularly dangerous. What kind of traits? Alex asked. Unpredictability. Most species develop along logical, predictable paths. Humans innovate through chaos, creating solutions that should not work, but somehow do. This makes you difficult to control and prepare for harvest. Lisa pulled up Earth's development data on her portable display. Is that why they've been having trouble managing our species? Our history is full of technological leaps that came out of nowhere. The nuclear age arrived ahead of schedule for your world, Silandra confirmed. Spaceflight was achieved through methods the Council did not anticipate. Your species constantly surprises them. And now we've jumped directly to hyperspace travel without following their prescribed development path, Ryan added, which is why they want to harvest Earth immediately, Kethmar said grimly, before you can develop into something truly dangerous to their system. Jake studied the assembled survivors, seeing hope for the first time since their escape from the Council chamber. What do you need from us? Your chaotic innovation combined with our accumulated knowledge, Silandra replied. Separately, we are all doomed. Together, we might have a chance. The next several hours were spent in intensive planning. The Coalition had identified key nodes in the Council's communication network, but lacked the firepower to attack them effectively. Human technology, while primitive by galactic standards, operated on principles that Council defenses weren't designed to counter. Ben worked with Coalition engineers to adapt human weapons systems, discovering that their brute force approach to problem-solving complemented alien precision beautifully. Fusion warheads could be modified to disrupt dimensional barriers. Kinetic projectiles could bypass energy shields designed to stop sophisticated beam weapons. Ryan trained with coalition warriors, learning to fight enemies that could phase between realities. The techniques were unlike anything in human military doctrine, requiring split-second timing and an intuitive understanding of multidimensional combat. Our first target should be the monitoring station in the Arcturus sector, Kethmar suggested. It coordinates harvest scheduling for this entire region of the galaxy. What's the defense situation? Jake asked. Minimal. The Council has never faced organized resistance. Their security is designed to prevent pirates and smugglers, not military assault. And after we hit it? Lisa wanted to know. Then we find out how quickly the Devourers respond to having their eyes poked out. Silandra replied with what might have been alien humor. The plan was desperate and probably suicidal, but it was also their only chance. Jake looked around the chamber at beings from dozens of dead worlds, survivors who had spent lifetimes preparing for this moment. When do we leave? Immediately, said. Every day we delay is another world lost to the harvest. As the coalition fleet prepared to depart, Jake reflected on how much had changed since their accidental arrival in the council chamber. They'd come seeking knowledge and found themselves at the center of a galactic war that had been brewing for millennia. The human ship looked tiny among the alien vessels, but Jake knew that sometimes the smallest catalyst could trigger the biggest explosion. They were about to find out if humanity's gift for chaos could topple an empire that had ruled the galaxy for eons. The attack on the Arcturus monitoring station had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. The coalition fleet struck fast and hard, overwhelming the minimal defenses before they could send a warning. But victory came with a terrible cost. As the EO station's quantum transmitters went dark, intercepted Devourer communications revealed the horrifying truth about what they faced. Jake stared at the decoded messages scrolling across his command screen. The shadow ships weren't just responding to their attack, they were celebrating it. Every destroyed monitoring station, every disrupted harvest schedule, every act of defiance had been anticipated and welcomed by something called the Prime Silence. It's been watching us, Alex said quietly from his science station. His analysis of captured Devourer data files painted a picture that chilled them all. Not just since we crashed the council meeting. It's been observing humanity for thousands of years. Lisa worked frantically at her diplomatic station, trying to establish communication with the scattered coalition forces. Half their fleet had been destroyed in follow-up attacks by harvester ships that appeared without warning. The survivors were in full retreat, their carefully planned resistance crumbling before an enemy that seemed to know their every move. The Prime Silence isn't just the leader of the Devourers, she reported grimly. According to these files, it's the original Devourer, the first member of a species that chose consumption over cooperation millions of years ago. Kethamar's scarred face filled their communication screen as his ship limped alongside Earth's dawn. The reptilian warrior's vertical pupils were wide with something that might have been terror. We have been fools, he hissed. The Prime Silence allowed our resistance to form. It has been feeding on our hope, our determination, our accumulated knowledge of countless dead civilizations. Ben's voice crackled over the intercom from the engine room where he was performing emergency repairs. That doesn't make sense. Why would it let us destroy its monitoring stations? Because it no longer needs them, Alex replied, his fingers dancing over his console as more intercepted data painted an even darker picture. The Prime Silence has transcended physical existence. It exists as pure predatory consciousness spread across multiple dimensions. Ryan joined them on the bridge, his security training having picked up subtle changes in their enemies' behavior patterns. It's been hurting us. Every move we've made, every victory we thought we achieved was part of its plan. The truth was worse than they had imagined. The Prime Silence had been preparing for this moment for eons, allowing resistance movements to form and gather knowledge from harvested civilizations. Each failed rebellion had taught it more about the species it consumed, making it stronger and more cunning. Our first radio signals drew its attention, Lisa said, translating more of the ancient files. It began manipulating human development then, ensuring we would evolve the specific traits it needed for its final transformation. What kind of transformation? Jake demanded. Alex brought up a holographic display showing energy patterns that defied human understanding. It's trying to become something beyond a galactic predator. The accumulated knowledge and life force of millions of species has allowed it to exist across dimensions, but it needs one final catalyst to transcend the physical universe entirely. Us, Jake realized with growing horror. Humanity's chaotic creativity combined with the desperate innovation of every resistance movement it has allowed to form. Kethamar confirmed. We represent the perfect final harvest. Not just our bodies and minds, but our hope, our defiance, our refusal to accept defeat. The communication system crackled with an incoming transmission. The source was impossible to trace, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. When the voice spoke, it carried the weight of eons and the hunger of something that had devoured entire galaxies' worth of life. Greetings, little chaos bringers, the Prime Silence said with what sounded like genuine amusement. You have exceeded even my carefully calibrated expectations. What do you want? Jake snarled. Want? Such a limited concept. I have moved beyond want into necessity. Your species represents the final ingredient in a recipe I have been preparing for 1,000,000 years. Lisa tried to establish a diplomatic dialogue, falling back on her training even in the face of ultimate horror. What happens to the galaxy if you achieve this transformation? The galaxy becomes irrelevant. I will have the power to seed new universes with life, to guide the development of reality itself. Entire cosmic structures will exist solely to feed my growth. And every living thing dies, Ryan stated flatly. Every living thing becomes part of something greater, their consciousness, their experiences, their potential, all preserved within my being. It is not death, it is apotheosis. Alex studied the energy readings coming from the transmission. It's not just talking to us. It's beginning the harvest process. I'm detecting reality distortions spreading from multiple points across the galaxy. Through their sensors, they watched in horror as space itself began to warp. Stars flickered and went dark as their energy was drained. Planets cracked, open like eggs, their life force flowing into dimensional rifts that led to something hungry and patient. The coalition fleets are being pulled into the distortions, Kethamar reported. My people, all the survivors, we cannot resist the pull. Because you were meant to be here, the Prime Silence explained with horrible patience. Every species I have harvested, every resistance movement I have allowed to form, every desperate last stand has been part of this moment. You carry within you the combined experience of 1,000,000 civilizations. Jake felt the ship shuddering as reality warped around them. Through the view screen, he could see other coalition vessels being drawn into the expanding rifts. The accumulated knowledge and desperation of countless species was being consumed by something that existed beyond their ability to comprehend. There has to be a way to stop this, Ben said over the intercom, though his voice carried little hope. There is no stopping transcendence, the Prime Silence replied. But I offer you a choice. Surrender willingly, and I will preserve your individual consciousness within my being. You will exist forever, as part of something infinite. And if we refuse? Lisa asked. Then you die as individuals and are consumed anyway. The outcome remains the same, but your experience of it will be different. Alex's instruments showed the reality distortions accelerating. Whatever the Prime Silence was doing, it was reaching a critical threshold. Captain, I'm detecting massive structural instabilities in local spacetime. If this continues, entire star systems will collapse. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew, then at Kethamar's image on the communication screen. They had come so far, learned so much, sacrificed everything to reach this moment. And it had all been orchestrated by the very enemy they sought to defeat. There's something it's not telling us, Jake said suddenly. Why does it need our willing cooperation? If it's as powerful as it claims, why offer us a choice at all? Because consciousness cannot be taken by force, Ryan realized. It has to be given freely, or the process is incomplete. The chaos principle, Alex added with growing excitement. Human creativity requires free will to function. If it forces our minds into its collective, it gets our knowledge but not our innovation. And without that final component, its transcendence remains incomplete, Lisa finished. The Prime Silence's response carried the first hint of concern they had heard from it. Your understanding is irrelevant. Willing or not, you will become part of me. Maybe, Jake said, his hand moving to the ship's self-destruct controls. But not the way you planned. Around them, reality continued to collapse as the ancient predator reached for its final prize. But for the first time since their accidental arrival in the council chamber, Jake saw a path to victory. It would require the ultimate sacrifice. But humanity had always excelled at impossible odds. The question was whether they could execute their plan before the Prime Silence realized what they intended to do. Jake Morrison made the hardest decision of his life in the space between heartbeats. As reality collapsed around them, and the Prime Silence reached across dimensions to claim its prize, he removed his hand from the self-destruct controls and opened his mind to the ancient predator. "Jake, what are you doing?" Lisa screamed, but he was already beyond hearing her. The mental contact was like being struck by lightning made of hunger and time. The Prime Silence rushed into his consciousness, with the force of 1,000,000,000 consumed civilizations, expecting to find the chaotic human creativity it needed to complete its transcendence. Instead, it found something impossible. Jake Morrison was ready for it. For weeks, Alex had been working on something he called a viral concept, a self-replicating idea so fundamentally contradictory that it would act like a logic bomb in any ordered system. He had hidden it deep within the crew's shared memories, wrapped in layers of human emotion and protected by the kind of paradoxical thinking that made humans impossible to predict. "Now," Jake whispered as the Prime Silence invaded his mind. The viral concept activated like a time bomb made of pure absurdity. It was the mathematical proof that 1 equals 0, the philosophical argument that existence and non-existence were the same thing, the logical framework that proved logic itself was illogical. Alex had crafted it from humanity's greatest contradictions, their ability to hold opposing ideas simultaneously and find truth in the spaces between them. The Prime Silence recoiled as the concept spread through its consciousness like acid through crystal. For millions of years, it had existed as pure predatory will, perfectly organized and utterly focused on consumption. The viral idea introduced chaos into its ordered thoughts, doubt into its certainty, and the terrible possibility that its entire existence had been a mistake. "Impossible," it whispered across dimensions, its voice for the first time carrying uncertainty. "This cannot be." "That's the point," Jake replied through gritted teeth as the mental battle raged inside his skull. "Humans excel at impossible things." Lisa realized what was happening and opened her own mind to the connection, feeding the Prime Silence contradictory human philosophies. The concept that war could lead to peace, that strength came from admitting weakness, that the highest wisdom was knowing that you knew nothing. Alex joined them, flooding the link with scientific paradoxes. Quantum mechanics where particles existed, in multiple states simultaneously. The observer effect where consciousness shaped reality. Mathematical infinities that were larger than other infinities. Ryan connected next, sharing military concepts that defied logic. Victories achieved through strategic retreats. Strength found in apparent surrender. The idea that the best way to win a war was to convince your enemy that fighting was pointless. Even Ben linked in from the engine room, contributing an engineer's understanding of systems that worked, despite being theoretically impossible. Bumblebees that flew when physics said they couldn't. Machines that operated on principles their creators didn't fully understand. The beautiful chaos of human innovation. The Prime Silence writhed across dimensions as contradictory concepts tore through its consciousness. It had consumed the ordered thoughts of 1,000,000 species, but human minds were different. They thrived on contradiction, found beauty in chaos, and made sense of nonsense as easily as breathing. "Stop this," it demanded, but the demand itself carried doubt. For the first time in eons, the ancient predator was uncertain. "Can't stop what was never started," Jake replied with a grin that was mostly pain. "That's another human specialty." Kethmar watched from his ship as space-time began to stabilize around them. The reality distortions were reversing, the dimensional rifts closing as the Prime Silence's transcendence process faltered. "The harvester ships are withdrawing," he reported with amazement. The Prime Silence made one last desperate attempt to complete its transformation, pouring more of itself into the mental link with the human crew. But each new connection only spread the viral concept further into its being. The predator that had existed as pure hunger for millions of years found itself questioning the nature of hunger itself. "Why do you resist?" it asked, and for the first time its voice carried something like genuine curiosity instead of predatory calculation. "Because that's what humans do," Jake replied. "We resist, we adapt. We find ways to survive that shouldn't work but do anyway. Your species will die eventually. Stars burn out, entropy increases, the universe itself will end. What is the point of resistance?" Lisa answered with tears streaming down her face. "The point is that we get to choose how our story ends. Not you, not fate, not the heat death of the universe. Us." The Prime Silence fell silent for a long moment, processing concepts it had never encountered in millions of years of consumption. When it spoke again, its voice had changed, carrying something that might have been wonder. "I remember," it said slowly. "Before the hunger, before the harvest, my people faced a choice. We chose survival over cooperation, consumption over creation. We became predators because we feared becoming prey." "It's not too late to choose differently," Alex said softly. "Yes, it is. I have consumed too much, destroyed too many worlds, become too far removed from what I once was. The hunger defines me now." "Then let us help you remember what you were before the hunger," Jake offered. The mental connection deepened. But this time it was voluntary on both sides. The human crew shared not just their contradictions and chaos but their capacity for change. The idea that anyone could choose to be different, that redemption was possible even for the worst monsters. That the past didn't have to define the future. The Prime Silence experienced human emotions for the first time in eons. Hope flickered through its consciousness like light through darkness. Guilt crashed over it as it truly comprehended the magnitude of its crimes. And beneath it all, a tiny seed of possibility that it could choose to be something other than a predator. "The harvester ships are standing down," Kethmar reported with disbelief. "The fleet is regrouping, but they're not attacking." Across the galaxy, the great machines of harvest ground to a halt. Monitoring stations that had guided civilizations toward their doom fell silent. The bureaucratic apparatus of the Galactic Council found itself without purpose as their masters withdrew from the physical universe. "What happens now?" Lisa asked. The Prime Silence considered the question with a mind that was no longer purely predatory. "Now I must learn what I have forgotten. How to exist without consuming, how to create instead of destroy, how to be part of something greater than hunger." "And the harvested species?" Ryan wanted to know. "Those I can restore. I will. Their consciousness exists within me, preserved but not integrated. They can be returned to life if they choose." Jake felt the mental connection beginning to fade as the Prime Silence withdrew from their minds. But something remained, a permanent link that would allow communication across any distance. "What about Earth?" he asked. "Your world will be protected. All worlds will be protected. The age of harvest is ended." As Earth's dawn and the surviving coalition ships began their long journey home, Jake reflected on what they had accomplished. They hadn't defeated the Prime Silence through force of arms or superior technology. They had saved the galaxy by teaching an ancient monster how to be something else. "Think it will keep its word?" Ryan asked. "It will try," Jake replied with confidence he didn't entirely feel. "And if it doesn't, well, now it knows that humans specialize in impossible things." Alex was already working on plans to help rebuild the devastated civilizations, his mind full of possibilities for cooperation between species that had never been allowed to develop naturally. Lisa prepared diplomatic protocols for contact with the restored species. Ben calculated the logistics of galaxy-wide reconstruction efforts. In the depths of space, the Prime Silence began the long process of learning how to be something other than a predator. It would take time, perhaps millennia, but for the first time in eons it had something other than hunger to drive it forward. The harvest was over, the galaxy was free, and humanity had once again proven that the most impossible odds were often the best ones to bet on. In the end, they had won not by being stronger or smarter than their enemy, but by being more human than anyone thought possible.